And this map is just a map of all the repositories listed. The different colours just show the different software packages that people are using, and the message from this map is that it is a worldwide endeavour. So you can see all the places that you would expect to be interested in access to academic information, and making sure academic information is made available are represented on this map. Moving over to journals, there is a similar listing to Open Door for repositories. This is the Directory of Open Access Journals, hosted by Lund University in Sweden, and that now lists almost 4,000 peer-reviewed open access journals, covering a wide spectrum, well, in fact the complete spectrum of academic endeavour, from art history right through to cosmology. I've highlighted a few interesting examples of some of the journals here. The first set of examples come from the Public Library of Science, who have launched a number of titles. Their first was Biology in 2003. Their aim was to show that you could have very high quality open access titles. So their aim was to try and rival Nature and Science in the level of the quality of the research that was published within their journals. And their two flagship journals, Biology and Medicine, have now got very high impact factors. So they show that quality papers can be published in open access. Biomed Central, actually I should say the Public Library of Science is a not-for-profit organisation. Biomed Central is a commercial publisher and have recently been bought, in fact, by Springer. They're now published almost 50,000 open access papers, and the number is growing almost exponentially. So they've been very successful. At the other end of the spectrum, in mathematics, you have Documenta Mathematica, which is run by a single academic at almost no cost, out of his office in university in Germany. But despite that very low infrastructure, it's now ranked 13th out of 200 mathematics journals listed by ISI. So again, showing that open access journals can be very high quality. And one of the things that we did last year was to help to launch an open access scholarly publishers association, an association that would provide a voice for the open access publishers, and to try and raise, to ensure that there was agreement about standards between them. There's also some very interesting experiments, I think, that some of the publishers are trying out with some of these new models. I should say that the presentations are going to be made available, so some of these slides from now on are going to become quite text heavy with lots of links, so you don't have to worry about that because you'll have access to them afterwards. Nature is experimenting with a preprint archive, an electronic archive, Nature Proceedings. So this is a place for people to put their papers before they've been peer reviewed. The Institute of Physics is working with the Physics Archive to build a front end onto archive to make it more user friendly for people, so they can deposit papers and to find other people's papers. So it's interesting, I think, to see how the established publishers are working with some of these new technologies and new models, adding value to them, to the models, to try and encourage people to stay with the established publishers. Public Library of Science, as well as launching their flagship journals, have also launched PLOS ONE, which is a very interesting experiment. It's a peer-reviewed open access online publication. But whereas a journal such as Nature will review a paper and say, well, it's technically correct, it's factually correct, but it's not, we think, of interest to the Nature readership, or it's not innovative enough. PLOS ONE says, well, if it's factually correct and you know, there are no errors in it, then it should be made available. So we have a lot of inefficiencies at the moment where papers are being reviewed many times by, you know, they start off, the author sends it off to Nature because he thinks, well, might as well have a try, see if I can get it in. It's reviewed, it's rejected. So the author thinks, well, I'll send it into the top specialist journal in this field. It's reviewed, it's rejected. So it goes down to maybe the second specialist journal in that field. It's reviewed and it's accepted. So the paper hasn't really changed much, but it's been reviewed by maybe 6, 7, 8 different people, just to be published in one title. That's a huge inefficiency within the system. What PLOS ONE tries to do is to get rid of that inefficiency by saying, well, if it's correct, we'll publish it. And it's becoming very successful. There are a lot of authors who want to see their papers published in PLOS ONE. So I think you can see there is a growing interest in both institutional repositories and in open access journals. A lot of the open access journals have now been around long enough that they've shown that they are sustainable and that they've shown that they can publish high quality research. The institutional repositories are also growing, the number is growing, and the amount of material within them is growing. So open access in both of the routes described by the Budapest Open Access Initiative are well established now within the academic community. But I think there are a number of external drivers from outside of our community which are going to push open access even further. I've listed a few of them here. The first is the constant drive that we're seeing from our political masters towards the knowledge economy. This is particularly obvious in Europe through the Lisbon Agenda. This was the heads of government back in 1990, I think it was, 2000, who said that by 2010 Europe should be the leading knowledge economy within the world. Part of that process was to increase the amount of money being spent on research and development, but also part of it was to make sure that there was easy flow of knowledge throughout Europe. Now, if you want to get knowledge about, if you want to get information about, then one of the easiest ways of doing that is through open access, where you give access to everybody who might be interested in that information. So we're seeing, from a policy point of view, governments becoming more interested in open access as a means of fulfilling their promises on the knowledge economy. As over the past few years, a lot of governments have put more money into research and more money into education. Now that may obviously change in the current financial situation, but there have been increases in R&D and in education. The governments have become more interested in accountability and assessment, trying to measure value for money. And that's happened at all levels, at the national level, at the university level, department level, right down to the individual level. And so some of the metrics, people are more interested in metrics of success. How many downloads have people had? How many times have they been cited? Who have they been cited by? At what rate of technology transfer has resulted from that work? Open access that allows more people to have access to the research, allows more people to download it, so your download counts go up, and allows more people to cite the research, so giving you possibility of higher citations, actually helps you if you're having to play that accountability and assessment game. There's a lot of talk and a lot of interest in e-science and e-research, so the idea that people share resources more, the idea that people take resources from different places and federate them together and to make them more than the sum of their parts, the idea that people can do data mining and text mining on research, on the literature, the idea that they're sharing disparate sources of information. All of those things are facilitated by a move towards open access. Because if we're collaborating on a research project and I have access to some data and some papers and you have access to others, but we can't share that information, then it lessens the effectiveness of that collaboration.